Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm your host, Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me at the market site in Times Square, we have Tom Maxon. He's the head of U.S. operations over at CoolBitX. We're going to take a look at the crypto industry and how it can adopt to the travel rule. Tom, it's great to have you with us at market site. Now, for those of us unfamiliar with it, the FATF travel rule, how it relates to the BSA travel rule in the U.S.?
Well, it's basically identical. There is just a difference in terms of how much is actually required. For example, the FATF has a level around $3,000, and in the BSA it's around $1,000, right? So there's a different level in terms of what is required in terms of transaction.
So is this like a know your customer kind of rule that we'd be more familiar with in, let's say, the equity or bond markets?
Well, yes, but it's actually on the transmission of the KYC information from one exchange to another exchange, right? Okay,
so that's interesting because typically with cryptocurrency, you can't trade, like let's say from broker to broker, everything's done on exchange. Everything is done on the exchange platform.
Right.
So if you are with exchange A, I'm with exchange B, you have to put all of your information on each individual one. Is that how?
Right. So for example, if you're a customer on an exchange, if you want to transact with me on another exchange, that exchange will have to send your KYC information to my exchange, and then I do a sanction screening or kind of KYC check, and then I approve the transaction later.
So why is this regulation necessary for crypto exchanges?
Well, before it's basically just your cryptocurrency addresses, and you could kind of send freely throughout the world. But now with AML laws being applied directly to cryptocurrency transactions, and the FATF calls this wire transfers. So basically it conforms with traditional finance in terms of wire transfers between banks, and it's just applied to a cryptocurrency context.
Right, because typically it's $10,000, I believe, traditional wire transfers, but the limits are actually lower for these regulations.
Right. For the BSA, it's actually around 3,000 to 1,000, right? And the BSA may change that depending on if they want to conform exactly with FATF standards, or do they want to just make their own standards, right? So it's significantly lower than $10,000.
Yeah, but Japan and South Korea, as you point out, they're examples for Wall Street. It's working.
Yeah, so it's very interesting. In Japan and Korea, it's basically retail driven. And then you have a lot of these institutional players, the online brokerage firms, they're going into this to capture that retail market. And in order to do that, they have to actually work through a legal SRO in Japan with the JVCEA, which is basically like a FINRA for cryptocurrency, but in Japan. So it's legally recognized, but you have to work through that in order to actually become a licensed exchange. And within that, KYC, AML, those kind of BSA, well, FATF requirements actually work. And they actually adopt them.
And do you think U.S. crypto exchanges, they can meet this criteria by October 2020?
Oh, sure. I think you need to have a bit of organization, make sure you have some standards across the board. But in terms of the actual transmission of the data, that is somewhat more simple to solve than, say, the actual governance of the entire, say, the network that needs to be able to transact between different exchanges. What protocol are they using, for example?
Yeah, because I mean, that's the challenge in the crypto markets. There's so much fragmentation that still exists.
That's true. And I think especially in the United States, you have a lot of probably the most famous exchanges and also the largest volume by any country. In Japan, you have much more centralization and in terms of cooperation through the JVCA. And in Korea now they have a licensing regime for their exchanges as well. So that makes it easier to move more quickly in terms of regulation.
All right, now CoolBitX, where do you fit in this entire ecosystem? What solutions are you providing to adhere to these?
So we have an API that allows the exchanges to transmit the basic KYC information from one exchange to another. And we do that very securely just through a very simple API plugin. So we see ourselves as the kind of router between the exchanges, and rather than saying the actual KYC or the basic sanction screening, we just see ourselves as kind of facilitating that transmission of data from one exchange to another.
And this is called Cigna?
That's right.
And how's that different than other applications that are out there?
Well, some are taking a very decentralized approach to compliance, which is very interesting, and I think that resonates with a lot of what cryptocurrency is about in the market. But when it comes to compliance, sending data from one place to another is actually very sensitive. And for example, is Coinbase willing to transact with a jurisdiction that has no licensing regime or anything like that? So there's new risk levels that are being adopted. Having a totally decentralized compliance program makes if everybody can cooperate on the same thing, then it makes all the risk become muddied and kind of pooled in this
Right. Well, the fact of the matter is, if you want to trade crypto, you're going to have to adhere to these regulations, or you're just not going to be able to trade.
That's right. And so if everybody is using the same protocol, how do you delineate what is risky transactions versus what is actual, solid and risk-free transactions?
When do you think, even if we're talking in terms of years, when it might be less fragmented, when it might be more cohesive, and there is a standard out there?
I think you're actually going to see, from a technical standpoint, probably by the end of this year, you're going to start to have that. And a technical standard for cryptocurrency is probably the baseline where you're going to build off of cooperation in terms of that. So, for example, whatever protocol is being standardized, a lot of exchanges will up their compliance to get into that liquid markets, compliance markets. So you're going to probably see that within probably 2 years, 3 years, you're actually going to have some cohesion around that.
Yeah, especially if you have larger players entering the market, or you have exchanges where they have worked in traditional investment banks, and they have the capital, and they have the network to make, you're either in or you're out.
Right, and I think this is actually a good segue, because AML laws are the baseline. For securities laws, the CFTC, et cetera, they're all saying that figure out the AML issues first, and then we'll figure out some of the securities issues later. So we're kind of working from a very foundational compliance level, and then once you solve some of these issues, then maybe institutionals can come in, different types of market players.
Which I think is a good approach. You have to start somewhere, and it can't always necessarily be at the top.
Right, and so we started from unregulated to moving towards regulated, and I think bit by bit you're going to start to see institutional investors in this kind of investor class become much more familiar and comfortable with this, especially if you have AML compliance settled.
So I'm so excited to watch how this plays out.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us at Market Site. And thank you for joining me on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.